The morning air hung thick over Kensington Gardens. A light mist clung to the grass, turning the world soft and gray. The guards stood perfectly still at their posts, eyes forward, breathing steady. They had seen thousands of visitors pass through these gates, but nothing could prepare them for what was about to happen. Prince Louis walked beside his nanny, small hand wrapped around hers. He was only 5 years old, with blonde hair that caught what little sunlight broke through the clouds. His blue jacket was buttoned up against the cool air. He kicked at leaves as they walked, making small crunching sounds with each step. They were heading toward the statue. The one his mother had mentioned before. The one that stood in the sunken garden, surrounded by flowers his grandmother had loved. Princess Diana's memorial statue. Louis had seen pictures of her, in the palace hallways, in his father's office, always smiling, always beautiful. But he had never seen this statue before. The nanny noticed something change in the boy's expression as they rounded the corner. His steps slowed. His grip tightened. Ahead, through the morning fog, the bronze figure came into view. Diana, frozen in time, her arms around 2 children. The sculptor had captured something impossible to describe. A warmth, a sadness, a love that seemed to reach beyond the metal. Louis stopped walking completely, his eyes fixed on the statue. The nanny felt his hand tremble in hers. She looked down at him, concerned. His face had gone pale. His lips pressed together like he was trying not to cry. For a long moment, he just stared. Then he whispered something. So quiet the nanny almost missed it. Is she real? Before the nanny could answer, Louis pulled his hand free. He took 3 small steps forward. The guards nearby shifted their eyes without moving their heads. Protocol demanded they stay focused forward. But something about this moment felt different, felt important. Louis's voice cracked when he spoke again, louder this time. Loud enough that 2 guards heard it clearly. Loud enough that it would stay with them for the rest of their lives. Mummy. His small voice carried across the empty garden. Is that you? If you're moved by this story, stay with us. Subscribe so you never miss moments that remind us why family, memory, and love matter most. Now, let's continue. The nanny's breath caught in her throat. She stepped forward quickly, reaching for Louis. But the boy didn't move. He stood frozen, staring up at his grandmother's face. Tears began rolling down his cheeks, silent at first. Then his shoulders started shaking. He wasn't sobbing loudly. It was worse than that. It was the quiet kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep, the kind that breaks hearts. One of the guards, a man named Thomas, felt his chest tighten. He had served the royal family for 12 years. He had stood through ceremonies, celebrations, funerals. He had trained himself not to react, not to feel. But this was different. This was a child. A little boy who had never known his grandmother, who had only seen her in photographs, who was now standing in front of her likeness, asking if she was real. Louis took another step closer. His hand reached out, trembling. His fingers touched the cold bronze of Diana's hand. The metal was smooth, lifeless, nothing like the warm embrace he had imagined. He pulled his hand back quickly, as if burned. She's not real, he whispered. She's not real. The nanny knelt beside him, her own eyes filling with tears. No, sweetheart, she said softly. It's a statue. But your grandmother, she loved you very much. Even though she never got to meet you. Louis looked up at her, confusion and pain mixing in his young face. Then why did Mummy say she watches over us? If she's not real? The question hung in the air, heavy, impossible to answer. The guards heard it. The gardeners working nearby heard it. Even the birds seemed to go quiet. And in that silence, something shifted in Kensington Gardens. Something none of them would ever forget. The nanny didn't know what to say. She had been trained for many things. How to protect, how to guide, how to handle tantrums and scraped knees. But no one had prepared her for this. For a child asking questions about death, memory, and love that reaches across time. She placed her hand gently on Louis's shoulder. Your grandmother is real, Louis. She just She's not here anymore. Not the way we can see and touch. But the love she had, that's still real. That never goes away. Louis wiped his nose with the back of his hand. He looked back up at the statue. Diana's bronze eyes seemed to look down at him. Kind, gentle, forever watching. Daddy says she would have loved us, Louis said quietly. Me and George and Charlotte. He says she would have played with us. The nanny nodded, her throat tight. She would have. Your daddy's right about that. Then why did she leave? The question came out small, broken. Why did she go away? Behind them, Guard Thomas felt something crack inside his chest. He had a daughter Louis's age. He had stood at this very spot during Diana's memorial ceremony years ago. He had watched William and Harry, grown men, unveil the statue with tears in their eyes. And now, here was the next generation. Still asking the same questions, still carrying the same grief. The morning mist was starting to lift. Sunlight broke through the clouds in thin streams. It caught the bronze statue, making it glow slightly. Louis noticed. His eyes widened. For just a moment, it looked like Diana was smiling directly at him, like the metal had warmed, like something impossible had happened. Did you see that? Louis asked, turning to his nanny. She smiled. I saw her smile. The nanny looked at the statue. It was just bronze, just metal. But she understood what Louis had seen. What he needed to see? Maybe she did, the nanny said softly. Maybe she's happy you came to visit her. Louis turned back to the statue. He stood up straighter, wiped his tears with both hands. Then he did something that made Guard Thomas's eyes burn with the effort not to cry. The little prince bowed. A proper, formal bow. The kind he had been taught for official events. But this wasn't official. This was personal. This was a grandson honoring a grandmother he would never meet. Hello, grandmother, Louis said clearly. My name is Louis. I'm 5. Mummy and Daddy told me about you. They said you were kind and brave, and that you loved people who were sad or hurting. The nanny stepped back, giving him space. Her hand covered her mouth. This wasn't in any protocol. This wasn't planned. This was just a child trying to connect with someone he had lost before he was even born. Louis continued talking to the statue, his voice growing stronger. Mummy says I have your smile, and Daddy says I'm cheeky like you were. I don't know what that means, but it makes him laugh when he says it. He paused. I wish you were here. Really here. Not just in pictures and stories. A breeze moved through the garden. It rustled the flowers planted around the statue. White roses. Diana's favorites. The sound was gentle, almost like a whisper. Louis tilted his head, as if listening to something only he could hear. The flowers are talking, he said suddenly. Can you hear them? The nanny smiled through her tears. What are they saying? They're saying she's listening. Louis looked up at Diana's face again. They're saying she hears me, that she's always been listening. Guard Thomas blinked hard. Once, twice. A single tear escaped down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. He couldn't move. Protocol demanded stillness. But even if he could move, he wouldn't have. Some moments were too sacred to interrupt. Louis reached into his jacket pocket and pulled something out. A small toy. A blue airplane. It was worn from being played with. The paint chipped in places. He held it up to show the statue. This is my favorite, he explained. Daddy gave it to me. He said it was his when he was little. He said you gave it to him. The nanny's eyes widened. She hadn't known Louis had brought that. Catherine must have given it to him that morning. A connection. A thread linking past to present. Grandmother to grandson. Through a simple toy that had been loved by 2 generations, Louis placed the airplane at the base of the statue, right next to the fresh flowers someone had left earlier that morning. I want you to have it back, he said, so you know I was here. So you know I'm thinking about you? Then he stepped back, took the nanny's hand again, and asked the question that would haunt the guards for years to come. Will I ever stop missing someone I never knew? The nanny knelt down again. She was crying now, not trying to hide it. Oh, Louis, she whispered. You don't have to stop missing her. Missing someone means they mattered. It means their love is still with you. Louis thought about this, his young face serious, considering, like when Mummy goes away for work. I miss her, but I know she loves me, even when she's not there. Exactly like that. Duh. But Mummy comes back. Louis's voice dropped. Grandmother can't come back. The nanny had no answer for that, because he was right. There was no comforting lie that could fix it. Diana was gone. She had been gone for years before Louis was born. Before any of William's children existed, she had missed everything. First steps. First words. Birthday parties. Christmas mornings. All of it. No, the nanny said finally. She can't come back. But Louis, she's still here in other ways. In your daddy's kindness. In your mummy's compassion. In the way you care about people. That's all, Diana. That's her love still living. Louis looked back at the statue one more time. The sun was higher now. The mist completely gone. The garden was coming alive. Birds singing. Flowers swaying. Life continuing, as it always did. I hope she knows, Louis said quietly. I hope she knows we remember her. She knows, sweetheart. I promise you, she knows. They stood there together for another moment. Then Louis tugged on the nanny's hand. Can we come back tomorrow? I want to bring her more things. I want to tell her more stories. Of course we can. Whenever you want. As they turned to leave, Guard Thomas finally allowed himself to breathe. His shoulders relaxed slightly. He had witnessed something profound. Something that would stay with him forever. A child's grief. Pure and honest. Unfiltered by time or training or royal protocol. But Louis wasn't finished. He stopped walking, turned back, and called out to the guards. Excuse me? Thomas's heart jumped. Protocol said don't respond, don't engage, stay focused forward. But this was a prince, a child, and the question in his voice was impossible to ignore. Excuse me, guards? Louis called again. Can you hear me? Thomas made a choice. He turned his head. Just slightly. Enough to meet Louis's eyes. Yes, Your Highness. Louis walked closer. The nanny followed, uncertain. Do you stand here every day? Louis asked. We rotate, Your Highness. But yes, there are always guards here. Do you watch over her? Louis pointed at the statue. Do you make sure she's safe? Thomas felt his throat constrict. We watch over everyone who comes here, Your Highness, including her memory. Yes, Louis nodded slowly, thinking. Thank you, he said seriously. Thank you for taking care of my grandmother. Thomas had to look away. Had to refocus forward before he lost composure completely. It's our honor, Your Highness. But Louis had one more thing to say. He stepped even closer. Close enough that Thomas could see the tears still clinging to the boy's eyelashes. Close enough to see the genuine concern in his young face. Do you think she's lonely? Being here by herself? The question shattered something in Thomas. He had been trained for threats. For protocol. For emergencies? Not for this. Not for a child's innocent heartbreak over a grandmother who had died before he was born. No, Your Highness, Thomas said, his voice rougher than intended. She's never alone. People visit her every day. They bring flowers. They bring their children. They tell her stories. She's very loved. Good. Louis seemed satisfied with this answer. That's good. Because nobody should be lonely. Mummy says that. She says everyone deserves to feel loved. Your mother is very wise, Louis smiled. A real smile this time. Small, but genuine. She is. She's the best mummy in the world. I think grandmother would have liked her. I think so too, Your Highness. Louis gave a small wave to the statue. Then he took the nanny's hand again. They walked away, back toward the palace. But every few steps, Louis looked back over his shoulder, checking, making sure the statue was still there, making sure his grandmother hadn't disappeared again. Thomas watched them go. He waited until they were out of sight before he let himself react. His hand shook as he raised it to his face. He wiped his eyes quickly, composed himself, but the other guard next to him had seen everything, had heard everything. That was. The other guard started, then stopped. There were no words. Yeah, Thomas agreed quietly. That was. They stood in silence for several minutes. The garden returned to normal. Tourists began arriving, cameras clicking, people posing next to the statue, smiling, laughing, not understanding the sacred moment that had just occurred in this exact spot. But Thomas understood, and he would carry it with him. The image of a small prince, crying for a grandmother he never knew, asking if she was lonely, leaving his favorite toy so she would know he cared. It was the purest form of love, uncomplicated, honest, the kind that transcends death itself. What Thomas didn't know was that this wasn't the end, that Lewis's question would ripple outward, that by evening someone else would hear about it, someone who needed to hear it, someone who had been carrying their own grief for far too long. That evening, Thomas returned home. His shift had ended hours ago, but he couldn't shake what he had witnessed. His wife noticed immediately. She always did. 20 years of marriage had taught her to read his silences. "Hard day?" she asked, setting dinner on the table. Thomas sat down slowly. He wasn't supposed to talk about what happened at the palace, protocol, privacy, but this felt different. This felt like something that needed to be shared. "I saw something today," he said quietly. "Something that broke my heart and put it back together at the same time." His wife sat across from him, waited. "Prince Louis came to the Diana Memorial. He's only 5. And he?" Thomas paused, collecting himself. He stood there, crying. Asked if the statue was his mummy. Then realized it was his grandmother. Someone he'll never know. And he asked if she was lonely. "If we take care of her?" His wife's hand went to her mouth. "Oh, that poor baby." But Sarah, the way he talked to her, the way he bowed, the way he left his favorite toy for her, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. This little boy trying so hard to connect with someone who's been gone for years, trying to make sure she knows she's remembered. Sarah reached across the table and took her husband's hand. That's grief. Love. Even children feel it. Especially children. They don't know how to hide it yet. I know. I couldn't stop thinking about William. About how he must feel, watching his children grieve for Diana. How do you explain that to a 5-year-old? How do you tell them their grandmother would have loved them, but they'll never get to experience it? You do what the nanny did. What you did. You tell them the truth with kindness. You let them feel what they need to feel. But something else was bothering him. Something he hadn't told his wife yet. Louis asked if he'll ever stop missing someone he never knew. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. What did the nanny say? She said he doesn't have to stop. That missing someone means they mattered. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Sarah said something unexpected. Your father would have loved that answer. Thomas looked up sharply. His father had died when Thomas was 6. Too young to remember much. Too young to grieve properly. He had spent his whole life wondering about the man in the photographs. The man everyone said was kind, funny, brave. What made you think of Dad? Because you're still missing him, aren't you? 40 years later, a man you barely remember, and you're not sure if that's normal. If you're allowed to grieve someone you didn't really know, Thomas felt something crack open in his chest. She was right. He had spent decades carrying that quiet ache, that sense of loss for something he never had. I thought I was being ridiculous. You're not. Louis isn't. Neither of you are ridiculous. Love doesn't require memory, Thomas. It requires connection. And you're connected to your father through blood, through stories, through the hole he left behind. Just like Louis is connected to Diana. Thomas's eyes burned. I wish I could tell him that. Tell him it's okay. That the missing doesn't go away, but it gets softer. That he'll carry Diana with him forever, and that's not a bad thing. Maybe you will tell him. Maybe one day, when he's older, when he needs to hear it from someone who understands. Meanwhile, back at Kensington Palace, Catherine was putting Louis to bed. He had been quiet all evening, thoughtful. She had heard about the visit to the statue. The nanny had told her everything. Now she sat on the edge of Louis's bed, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "Mummy," Louis asked softly, "can I ask you something?" "Always, darling." "Did Grandmother Diana know about me? Before she died? Did she know I would exist?" Catherine's heart squeezed. "No, sweetheart. You weren't born yet. But I think if she could see you now, she would be so proud. So happy." "How do you know?" "Because I know how much she loved your daddy. And you're so much like him. Kind, thoughtful, brave, all the things she loved most." Louis was quiet for a moment. "Then I left her my airplane today. The one Daddy gave me. The one that was his when he was little." Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. She had wondered where it had gone. "That was very special of you, Louis. Why'd you do that?" "So she knows I was there. So she knows I'm thinking about her. And so she has something from Daddy too. Something to remember him by." "Oh, Louis." Catherine pulled him into a hug. "You have such a big heart, Mummy. Do you think she can see us? Really see us? Not just the statue, but the real her." Catherine thought carefully. She wanted to be honest, but she also wanted to give him comfort. "I think love finds a way to reach the people who need it. Whether that's Diana watching from somewhere we can't see, or whether it's her love living on through your daddy, through our family, through the good we do in her name. Either way, the love is real. The connection is real." Louis seemed to accept this. He snuggled deeper into his blankets. "I want to go back tomorrow." "Is that okay?" "Of course it's okay. We can go together if you'd like. Will you tell me stories about her? Real ones? Not just the nice things everyone says. I want to know what she was really like." Catherine smiled. "She was really like you, actually. She didn't like sitting still. She loved to laugh. She cared more about people's feelings than about rules. And she gave the best hugs in the world. Like you?" "I hope so. I try to be. Your grandmother taught us all how to love better, how to see people who are hurting, how to be kind even when it's hard." Louis yawned. "I wish she was here." "Me too, sweetheart." "Me too." As Catherine stood to leave, Louis called out one more time. "Mummy, do you think Daddy's sad that we never got to meet her?" Catherine turned back. In the dim light of the nightlight, she could see tears on her son's cheeks. "I think your daddy carries that sadness every day. But I also think you, George, and Charlotte bring him more joy than he ever thought possible. You help heal that hurt, Louis, just by being you." Louis nodded, then whispered, "I love you, Mummy. I love you too, darling. So much." She closed the door softly. Then she stood in the hallway, pressing her hand to her mouth, letting herself cry. For Diana, for William. For their children who would grow up with a hole where their grandmother should be, for the love that survived, for the grief that lingered. For all of it, William came home late that night. He had been in meetings all day. Official duties. Responsibilities. The endless demands of royal life. He found Catherine in their private sitting room, staring out the window at the gardens below. "Everything all right?" he asked, loosening his tie. Catherine turned. Her eyes were red. "Louis went to Diana's statue today." William froze. "Oh, I didn't know that was planned. It wasn't. Not officially. The nanny thought he might want to see it. He's been asking questions lately. About his grandmother. About why she's not here." William sat down heavily. "What happened?" Catherine told him everything. The tears. The questions. The airplane. The conversation with the guards. By the time she finished, William's hands were covering his face, his shoulders shaking. He asked if she was lonely. Catherine said softly, "If anyone takes care of her." "William, he has such a tender heart. He's carrying this grief for someone he never knew." William's voice came out broken. "I never wanted this for them. I wanted them to grow up without this weight, without this absence hanging over everything. I know. But darling, they're going to feel it anyway. She's part of them. Part of you. They need to understand that. They need to know it's okay to miss her. William looked up. His eyes were devastated. I miss her every day. Every single day? And it's been nearly 30 years. Sometimes I see Louis smile, and it's her smile. Or Charlotte says something cheeky, and it's exactly what Mum would have said. And it breaks me all over again. Catherine moved to sit beside him. She took his hand. Tell me about her. Not the public version. The real her. What would she have been like with our children? William laughed through his tears. She would have spoiled them rotten. Completely rotten. She would have played with them on the floor. Ignored all the rules about what princes and princesses should do. She would have made them laugh until they couldn't breathe. Louis needs to know that. He needs those stories, I'm afraid, William admitted. Afraid of making it worse. Afraid of them loving someone they can never have. But they already do. Louis already loves her. And keeping her memory alive doesn't make it worse, William. It makes her real for them. It gives them something to hold on to. William was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I should talk to him. Tomorrow, I should tell him about Mom. Properly. Not just the sad parts. The beautiful parts, too. He'd like that. And William? He left her your airplane. The one she gave you when you were small. William's breath caught. He what? He wanted her to have something. Something to know he was there. Something that connected him to you and you to her. William stood abruptly. I need to see him. He's asleep. I don't care. I need to see him. Catherine watched as her husband climbed the stairs. She knew he needed this. Needed to hold his son. Needed to process the weight of what Louis had done. William opened Louis's door quietly. The nightlight cast a soft glow across the room. Louis was curled up under his blankets, one hand tucked under his cheek. He looked peaceful, innocent, too young to carry the weight he was carrying. William sat on the edge of the bed. He didn't wake Louis, he just watched him breathe. This little boy who looked so much like Diana, who had her eyes, her spirit. Her enormous capacity for empathy. I'm sorry, ma'am. William whispered into the darkness. I'm sorry you're missing this. Missing them. They're extraordinary. You would have adored them, small voice answered. Daddy. William startled. Louis, I didn't mean to wake you. Louis sat up, rubbing his eyes. Are you sad? A little bit? Yes. About grandmother. William hesitated, then decided on honesty. Yes, about grandmother. Louis crawled into his father's lap without asking. Just settled there, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I met her today, sort of. I talked to her statue, I heard. Your mummy told me. Are you mad? That I left the airplane? William pulled his son closer. No, not mad. Never mad. I think it was the most beautiful thing you could have done. I wanted her to know about us, about me and George and Charlotte. I wanted her to know we remember her. William's tears fell freely now. She knows, Louis. I promise you, she knows. How can you be sure? Because love doesn't end, buddy. Even when people leave, even when they're gone, the love stays. And your grandmother loved me so much, which means she loves you too. You're part of me, part of her. That love continues. Louis thought about this. I wish I could have met her. Me too. Every day. But Louis, you carry her with you. In the way you care about people. In the way you think about others' feelings. That's all her. That's Diana living on through you. The nanny said, I don't have to stop missing her. The nanny's right. You don't. I haven't stopped. Your Uncle Harry hasn't stopped. We miss her every day. But that's okay. Missing her means we loved her. And that's not a bad thing. Louis hugged his father tightly. I love you, Daddy. Love you too, buddy. So much it hurts sometimes. They sat there together in the quiet. Father and son. Both grieving the same woman, both carrying her memory forward, both trying to make sense of a loss that didn't make sense. Finally, Louis asked, Can we visit her together? Tomorrow, you, me, Mummy, George, and Charlotte? All of us. William's throat tightened. Yeah, Yeah, we can do that, and you can tell us stories. Real stories about her? I'd like that very much. Louis settled back into bed. William tucked the blankets around him. As he turned to leave, Louis called out one more time. Daddy, do you think she's proud of you? William stopped in the doorway. The question hit him like a physical blow. It was something he had wondered his entire adult life, something he would never know for certain. But looking at his son, seeing Diana's legacy alive in this brave, compassionate little boy, he thought maybe he did know. I hope so, William said honestly. I really hope so. I think she is. I think she's watching all of us, and I think she's happy. William smiled through his tears. Good night, Louis. Good night, Daddy. The door closed softly, and in the darkness, Louis whispered one more thing. Too quiet for anyone to hear, but maybe somewhere Diana heard it anyway. Good night, Grandmother. I'll see you tomorrow. The next morning arrived with clear skies. No mist, no clouds. Just bright sunshine that made everything feel lighter somehow. The family walked together through Kensington Gardens, William and Catherine holding hands. George walking ahead trying to act grown up at 8 years old, Charlotte skipping beside him, and Louis between his parents holding both their hands. When they reached the statue, the children stopped. George had seen it before, at the unveiling, but that had been different, formal. This felt personal. Charlotte had never been. She stepped forward cautiously, studying Diana's bronze face. She looks kind, Charlotte said quietly. She was, William replied, the kindest person I ever knew. Louis pointed to the base of the statue. Look, my airplane is still there. Sure enough, the small blue toy sat exactly where Louis had placed it yesterday. A gardener must have decided to leave it, or maybe Guard Thomas had requested it stay. Either way, it remained. A small offering from a grandson to a grandmother. William knelt down and picked up the airplane. He turned it over in his hands. Memories flooding back. His mother handing it to him on a rainy afternoon, her smile as he zoomed it through the palace hallways. The way she pretended to be annoyed but was always laughing. I haven't seen this in years, William said softly. You gave it to me, Louis reminded him. For my 4th birthday. You said it was special. It is special. But Louis, I think it should stay here. As long as they'll let it, I think Mum would like that, knowing it's being loved by another generation. Catherine watched her husband with the airplane, with their children, and she saw Diana in all of them, in George's protective instinct toward his younger siblings, in Charlotte's fierce independence, in Louis's tender heart. Diana's legacy wasn't just in photographs and statues. It was here, living, breathing, growing. Tell us a story, Daddy, Charlotte requested. About grandmother. William placed the airplane back at the statue's base. Then he sat down on the bench nearby. The children gathered around him. Catherine sat close, her hand on his knee. What kind of story? A happy one, George said firmly. Not a sad one. William smiled. All right. Happy story. Let me think. He looked up at the statue, at his mother's face, and suddenly he was 12 years old again. Sitting in her room while she got ready for an event, watching her laugh at something he had said. Did I ever tell you about the time Mum snuck Uncle Harry and me out of the palace to go to McDonald's? The children's eyes widened. Really? Louis gasped. We were supposed to be at home, studying, but Mom decided we needed an adventure. So she borrowed a car, wore a terrible wig, and drove us herself to McDonald's. No security, no photographers. Just us? What did she order? Charlotte wanted to know. Chicken nuggets. Lots of chicken nuggets. And she ate the fries out of our boxes when we weren't looking. Then she took us to the arcade. Played video games with us for hours. She was terrible at them, but she didn't care. She just wanted us to have fun. Sounds fun, George said, smiling. She was so much fun, but she was also... William paused, choosing his words carefully. She was sad sometimes. She had her own struggles. her own pain, but she never let that stop her from loving us. From making us feel special, Louis leaned against his father. I wish we could have had adventures with her. Me too, buddy. But you know what? We can still have adventures. We can still make her proud. By being kind, by helping others, by living the way she taught us to live. Catherine spoke up. Your grandmother believed that love was the most important thing, that showing people they mattered could change the world. And that's what we try to do. In her honor, Charlotte stood up suddenly. She walked to the statue, looked up at Diana's face. Then she did something unexpected. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small bracelet. Friendship beads she had made herself. She placed it carefully next to the airplane. For you, grandmother, she said simply. So you have something from me too. Catherine's breath caught. William's eyes filled with tears again. George, not wanting to be left out, added a small drawing he had been carrying. A picture of the family, stick figures holding hands. He placed it gently at the statue's feet. Now she has something from all of us, George said. William stood. He walked to the statue. His children watched as their father placed his hand on Diana's bronze hand, the same way Louis had done yesterday. Thank you, ma'am, he whispered, for everything, for loving us, for teaching us, for giving us the tools to be better. We're trying. I promise you, we're trying. Guard Thomas watched from his post. He recognized the family, of course, and he understood what was happening. Yesterday's private moment of grief had become today's family remembrance. The cycle continuing, the love passing down. The family stayed for nearly an hour. William told more stories. Some funny, some touching, some that made the children gasp with surprise. Catherine added her own memories, things William had told her over the years, things she wanted the children to know. Finally, as the morning grew later, they prepared to leave. But Louis had one more question. He looked up at his father with those serious blue eyes. Daddy, does it get easier? Missing her? William considered this carefully. It gets different. The sharp pain becomes a soft ache. The memories make you smile more than they make you cry. But Louis, you never stop missing the people you love. You just learn to carry them with you, to let their love make you stronger, okay? Louis seemed satisfied with this answer. I can do that. I know you can. As they walked away, Louis looked back one final time. The statue stood in the sunlight, peaceful, surrounded by flowers, and now by the small gifts from her grandchildren. Goodbye, grandmother, he called out. We'll come back soon. And they did. Not every day, but often enough, it became their tradition. On difficult days, on happy days, on days when they just needed to feel close to her, they would visit, they would talk, they would leave small tokens. They would remember. Years later, Louis would be grown. He would have his own children, and he would bring them to this same statue. He would tell them about the day he first visited, about the question he asked, about the tears he cried, about how love connects us across time and death and everything in between. He would tell them about the grandmother they never knew, about her kindness, her courage, her enormous heart. And he would explain that grief isn't something to fear. It's something to honor. Because grief is just love with nowhere to go. And in that moment, teaching his own children about Diana, Louis would finally understand what the nanny had told him all those years ago. You never stop missing someone you love. But that missing becomes part of who you are. It shapes you, strengthens you, reminds you what matters most. The statue remains in Kensington Gardens. People visit from all over the world. They leave flowers. They take photographs. They cry. They smile. They remember. But for William's children, it's more than a memorial. It's a connection. A bridge between past and present. A grandmother watching over them, teaching them through stories, loving them through the legacy she left behind. And on quiet mornings, when the gardens are empty and the mist hangs low, if you listen carefully, you might hear something. A child's voice. Asking questions, sharing secrets, promising to remember. because that's what love does. It echoes, it endures, it transforms grief into grace. And it reminds us that the people we've lost are never truly gone, not as long as we carry them forward, not as long as we speak their names, not as long as we love. Diana's story didn't end on that terrible night in Paris. It continued through her sons, through her grandchildren, through every life touched by her compassion, through every person who learned to love more deeply because of her example. And in a small way, it continued through a 5-year-old boy who stood in front of a bronze statue and asked, "Mummy, is that you?" Through his tears and his questions and his enormous heart, through his refusal to let someone he never knew remain a stranger. That's the power of love. That's the triumph over grief. That's Diana's real legacy. Not in the photographs or the headlines or even the statue, but in the children who carry her forward, who ask brave questions, who feel deeply, who love without limits, and who will never, ever forget.